Paul Hatchett, without fans, we as wrestlers are nothing, and you are correct. And,
Hallelujah. Amen, my brother.
I hate to get on to people, and, I hate to talk about some people.
It sounds like you hate to do something, Brent.
I hate to do it, but I got to say.
I know that you hate to do it, but you're going to do it anyway. Go ahead.
There was 4 wrestlers, maybe 5, maybe 6 even in WCW times. And I'm not going to throw their names out because I think I've talked about them before. They had
What was their names again? What was their names again?
I think one of them had the same name as a singer.
Johnny B. Sad? Is it Johnny B. Sad?
Could be one of those. But there was another singer. And we'll just let you figure out the name that was the same as the singer.
Van Awful? Is it Van Awful?
No, I don't think that was the name either.
Okay. But was it Van Screwdriver?
You're talking about Van Hammer?
Is it Van Hammer?
Well, nobody really cares whether or not he liked it.
Okay.
So that's nobody ever cares about Van Hammer.
Okay, I know you don't want to tell anybody, but you can tell us later.
Well, I'll tell y'all privately, and we'll.
Okay. But, and I'll share it with everybody later. Go ahead.
You could not get him to understand that without wrestling fans, he was nothing. I don't know why, but you could not get him to understand that. And he thought he was so much better than they were. And if it wasn't for them, he would not have got the money that he received in wrestling. I hope today that he gets online, he gets on there and thanks each and every one of the fans that gave him the opportunity to be who he was. And because he didn't have the respect for him then. So maybe you'll have respect for him today because the wrestling fans, we were taught you respect the wrestling fans because we were wrestling fans. And I'll get off my soapbox on that, but I just thought I want to talk about it. And while we're talking about Van Hammer, I have to tell this story. WCW, they made the decision one time they're going to use Van Hammer. And they did not have a wrestling person taking care of the merchandise. They had some guy, I don't know who it was, but he was the guy ordering all the merchandise. Well, he comes over there and he orders thousands of these blow up guitar things and a bunch of pictures and shirts. I mean, thousands upon thousands of these things. And somebody goes and asks him, and I think it was either Jim Ross or we might have been Dusty Rhodes. He said, do you know if Van Hammer's is there going to be a big push for him? So I don't know, but I just thought those were good. Them little guitars and everything would sell great. So, but if he doesn't get a push, it doesn't matter if you do that. Then eventually they had to give away the little guitars as free gifts for people to come into the building because nobody was buying no Van Hammer. And if you're around, I'm sorry, it wasn't your fault. But that was a pretty sad thing for poor old Van Hammer. Let's see. Reggie Cassidy said, "Yes, I miss storytelling." Yeah, the storytelling is not in the wrestling business today, and it's surely missed. But I do see, and Jack, if I'm not, I might be wrong about that, but I think WWE has started calling. They don't call them superstars anymore. I think they're actually starting to call the wrestlers. They're calling them wrestlers now. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, I mean, they still refer to them as superstars too, but they are using the word wrestler quite a bit more now. And from my understanding, Paul Heyman is the one who pushed Vince to allow that to be used again.
Well, that's good. And even said the words wrestling match. The world must be in trouble because to allow that.
Well, here let me just say this real quick. One of the first things your dad ever taught me was he said, I don't care how many bells and whistles you put to it. Eventually, wrestling comes back to the basics.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the business is going to have to go because there's only so many ladders and buildings you can dive off of, till the magic is gone. And then you got to start recreating from the ground up again and make wrestling mean something.
Jay Smith said, I just started hearing Mark the past few years. Thanks for the clarification. And people do use it wrong. I mean, there's WWE wrestlers using it today. Some lady wrestler called Jim Cornette a mark. Come on now. They need to be teaching the wrestlers, maybe have a class and teach them the history of wrestling. It would be helpful for those people not to be calling Jim Cornette a mark because that really makes you makes you look bad because you don't even know what the word means. So it would be helpful if you knew what it meant. Let's see. Gary said wrestlers today are pretty much only worried about getting their high spots in. They want to see themselves talked about on social media. I believe is that true?
Right.
Do you think that's true?
I will say this: wrestlers wrestle for the guys in the dressing room and not the people in the audience. That is the problem.
Yeah.
They could care less.
I agree with that.
Sitting in the stands could care less about them. All it is about seeing if I can get the bat on the back. Did you see me do this when they get to the back? That's the way it's all it is.
Well, very rarely when we were running shows or were a part of that, Jack, and you probably tell it, we never really gave the people a pat on the back and said that was great.
No, I guess not.
If it was bad, it was bad, and there was just
if it was bad, if you stunk up the joint, you got a conversation. But if it was good, then nobody said anything to you, you know, and that's how you knew you did okay tonight.
Exactly.
If you met at the door, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Brian said, listening to you West brothers is like sitting at the table listening to your dad. He was such a great teacher if you shut up and listen. Probably don't know as much as our father knew, but we made a lot of trips up and down the road with not only him, but Dick Murdoch, Jacques Rougeau, which was Jerry Roberts at the time. I mean, so many wrestlers that we rode up and down the road with wrestling too, and you would listen to them tell you the stories. That's where you learn the wrestling business, and you learn from the older guys because they would tell you this. Where Dick Murdoch had some of the greatest stories in how to build stuff that I think anybody we ever rode the car. Now, Leroy Brown, he went to sleep, so we never got to hear anything he had to say. He went to sleep when he got in the car.
Dutch Mantell was another one.
Oh, yeah.
Dutch knew his stuff. He did. He knows his stuff. He knows his stuff.
David Lawson asked this question. He said, in a previous episode, you talked about running in Cleveland, Tennessee, and then getting ran out. What happened? Well, Rodney, would you like to pick that up?
Fire marshal.
Government happened. Government happened. The city of Cleveland, Tennessee, did the well. They did them worse than what Vince McMahon did us worse than what Vince McMahon did to Bret Hart. It was terrible. We bring in the fire marshal. We have a building that's owned by our cousins, or rented by our cousins, and they only use half of it. So we was going to use the other half for wrestling. And so we brought in the fire marshal. We thought we was going through all of the right channels. Fire marshal comes in, tells us what we need to do, put up a firewall, and our cousins put about $10,000 worth of improvements to the building. Well, we come up and we start to run, and the fire marshal comes in and says, "Oh, we're only going to be able to do this for 3 weeks, and you're shut down." We just did what you asked us to. Oh, no, you have to go through the state. You're going to have to get an architect in here. You're going to have to. It was total nonsense, and he never told us in the beginning that's what we had to do. And then we called the state in, and the state said, yeah, you're going to have to put in, you have to get an architect to do architectural designs, to do assembly. It was the biggest runaround I ever seen. And it was from the city of Cleveland and the government of Cleveland that did that to us.
Yeah.
You know, that same thing happened to us in Chattanooga, Tennessee. At the Memorial Auditorium. We had the dates for the whole year. We were going to run once a month for 6 months. Then we were going to run every other week, and the rest of the season. We had every date booked, and they came to us at the show that night about 4 in the afternoon and said, "Oh, by the way, you can't come back here. We're having problems with the city. I'll lose my job." The manager said, "I'll lose my job. If you make a big deal out of it, please don't make a big deal." And because we knew him for 30 years, we did make a big deal out of it. But I mean, we had nowhere to go because Chattanooga didn't really have another building. They had the UTC Arena. You certainly couldn't run that. They had the Cam Jordan Arena. You couldn't run that because that was expensive. They made you pay for every chair you put down on the floor. And then the police was like $1,000 just to get them there. So we had nowhere to place. We tried to go to Dalton, Georgia. Dalton didn't draw for WCW. They didn't really draw for WWE, and we just was stuck with no place to go. So twice.
Yeah, we proved that wrestling does not draw in Dalton.
This is true. We see
that was the saddest Waffle House meal I think we've ever had together.
That was pretty sad. I don't, but no, twice, and that was done probably within a year with each other.
Yeah,
we got done that way twice, and so we were very leery about going anywhere because we was afraid we'd get closed down everywhere we went. And so let's see. Gary said, "Oh, go ahead, Jack."
Well, I was just going to say, not drawing was not the reason we didn't go. We drew some big crowds.
Yeah, we did.
We had great response. We had some great talent. The shows were top notch. It was not the product that was the reason we left.
No, we got closed down by governments twice. Heck no, Brent. They book week to week. They change storylines backstage right before the show. It's not watchable these days. I don't watch it. I do watch bits and pieces of it. I don't. There's a lot of wrestling to watch every week. So if you watch, there's like how much wrestling is on every week now, Jack?
Well, WWE has 7 hours of live programming every week. There's AEW, 2 hours. Impact Wrestling, I think, is a 2-hour show. I can't get that one, so I don't keep up with it. And then you've got, Ring of Honor has an hour show. You could spend a full day watching nothing but current wrestling each week.
David Lawson said Ole Anderson had great heat in the back as well. So he had it in both places.
I think Ole, as far as, we're a little hard on Ole, but Ole, when he was in charge, he brought stability. There was no question of who was in charge. And if you crossed him, and it doesn't matter who you are, you crossed him, you will get chewed. There's no doubt about it. And he had no specials. There's no special privileges, no favorites.
And
there was only one favorite, and that's Ole Anderson.
Yeah. Bill Eady told me, he said, I always got along with Ole. He said, but also I always did what I was asked to do, and I never argued about anything either. So.
Yeah, I think that, we do give Ole a hard time. Ole was one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. I will give him that. He was one of the greatest wrestlers, and he was one of the, I think, it's definitely the top 10 greatest tag teams of all time, Ole and Gene Anderson. Or you can even put Ole Anderson and Ivan Koloff in that as being because they were good. They
were.
We just put Ole Anderson and Stan Hansen on, and they were the World Tag Team Champions at one time, and they were good, but nowhere near the Ivan Koloff, Ole Anderson, and Ole and Gene were just great. You couldn't beat them. They knew that psychology. They knew how to get the heat, and then when you put them with somebody like Tommy Rich or Dusty Rhodes or Tony Atlas, that was gold. Let's see, Tully Blanchard was another.
Oh yeah, Tully Blanchard. Yeah, he's great.
he was there. David Lawson said Ole turning on Dusty was phenomenal. Yes,
I was there.
Yes, that was a.
The other one with Dusty though that I think was the year before, which I haven't been able to find any video of it, was the parking lot incident with Dusty, with Ole and Ivan Koloff. Set up a match. It was supposed to be the Briscoes against Ole and Ivan, return match for the Georgia Tag Team Championship. And in that match, Dusty Rhodes was going to be the special guest referee. And Stan Hansen injured Jerry Briscoe, so Wrestling 2 took Jerry's place. So it's Wrestling 2 and Jack Briscoe against Ole Anderson, Ivan Koloff. And Dusty staggering down the stairwell at the Atlanta City Auditorium. It used to be the bumper forever for Georgia Championship Wrestling. And then collapsing on the floor was just a shock, a total shock to everybody. Nobody saw it coming, nobody. And the Omni was an example of that because they were sitting on the steps at the Omni. Omni held 17,000 people, and you had people sitting on the steps to watch Ole Anderson, Ivan Koloff against Dusty Rhodes and Bill Watts. And the place was electric.
Dad took weeks to try to sell this to Ole. Ole did not want to do it. It was considered Tennessee bull crap. And I'm using the censored version of what Ole said. But what was a funny thing is when Dusty was outside, Dusty had went out there and done his business, and he was rolling around on the ground, get all that dirt and all that grime on his clothes and ripping his clothes because he was outside. Well, he was staggering himself, and there were police out there. And the police were saying, "Hey, man, what's it?" And he had to run as fast as he could to get inside that building before the police stopped him, because he knew he had to get inside the building. And he about got arrested before he got in.
Got him for being drunk.
You know,
he was riding in my mother's Vega. Can you imagine big old Dusty in a little Vega?
But that was a backstory nobody would probably know about. But yes, he almost did not make it inside and mess up the whole angle. So.